Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to the Champions Showdown Fischer Random Tournament in 2020. It has been so far a great tournament. 8 rounds have been played. So far, one more game to play, and at the end of the video, I will show you the current standings, but also I will show you the pairings of the last round. So we will have really an intense last round because 4 players have the opportunity to win this tournament. So now I wanted to show you a great gameplay by Magnus Carlsen against Peter Svidler. And Magnus had some troubles in this tournament, but won many games. Has also lost some games, but you really need to win some games in order to make something happen. Wesley, so for instance, he won some games. He didn't lose so many games, but he played only draws. That's the problem, and that's why Wesley had some troubles also in the continuation of the tournament, although he won the direct game against Magnus Carlsen. So as I said, it has been really a wild tournament, and after the second day in the lead was the top grandmaster Levon Aronian. So let's check out now first the game between Magnus Carlsen and Peter Svidler. Then after that game, I'll cover also the last round, so the round 9, in which we'll know who will be the winner of this very nice tournament. So let's check out now the game, and as usual, round 1 and fight. Here Magnus played the white pieces, and here Magnus, I think, found better ways. He had some troubles to build setups in this Fischer Random. You see, for those who don't know, you see we have really this mixed up first rank here, and still you can castle. You can move, for instance, the king here to g1, then the rook will come to f1, and still you can castle. So it's not a problem, but you have to find a fast setup, a normal setup, like in usual chess. And here Magnus opened with the move d4. So this is a good choice because he realized that he has a good control with this knight in the center, so he could play knight to c3, e4, or maybe this knight could go to c3, and after potential e4, still this knight could come on e3. So these knights are very well placed already on b1 and d1, so they can go towards the center. In some of this Fischer Random setups, we saw that the knights, for instance, were cornered, were on the edge of the board, so it's not good, of course, to have your knights on the edge of the board. So that's why this is a perfect setup to play a centralized game. Someone is texting me. I'm not going to answer that again. So okay, here after the move d4, Peter Svidler responded with the move d5. We have knight to c3, and after c6 and e4, this is now sort of a Caruana game. After b6, here Peter Svidler realized that there are maybe some tactical threats on the rook, pardon me, on the king on f1. And here Magnus castled. That's a great move. And after the move bishop to a6, the game becomes really wild from this point on. So here Magnus decides to sacrifice the exchange. He plays e takes d5 and sacrifices the rook. After bishop takes f1, we have queen to f1. And you see now, if you take c takes d5, then knight to d5 will happen. And the problem is now, you may think the queen can come here to d7 and will grab one of these pieces, but it's really not the problem. Here, after the move knight to d7, you don't have to retreat with the knight. You can fix the pawn structure, and you see now we have two very nice centralized pawns. If you take, for instance, the knight here, then you get g3 and your rook is hanging, and this will be a perfect position to continue in this game with the bishop pair, and I think black is simply lost. So as I said, after the move queen to f1, Peter Svidler also castled, and Magnus plays now the whole game down the exchange, but Magnus will show here really some great attacking skills. Here g3, Magnus opens the light square diagonal. You see Peter Svidler cannot compete anymore on light squares. We have e6, and now finally d takes c6. After knight to c6, we have d5. Magnus breaks the position for the light square bishop. Great attack. E takes d5, knight to d5. And believe me or not, the evaluation here is much better for white immediately. Although down the exchange, but now, again, Magnus Carlsen is threatening some forks here on c7. The bishop still has good activities with potential bishop to f4 moves. This knight still can choose wherever it likes to go. And here, the rook is also a very active piece on the e file or maybe on the d file. So in the game, knight to e6 was played by Svidler, knight to e3. Of course, this knight to e6 comes with the idea to prevent white to jump on this c7 square, and now rook to d8. This is so far an open game, and the best way for black here to protect everything is to keep a compact position. When you have an open position, when you don't have pawns in the center, when you don't have maybe also some activities in the center, it's really time to regroup towards the center. You cannot leave your center unprotected. So far, as I said, we don't have any more the pawns on the board, so you have to protect your center with minor pieces or with the pawns. But as I said, pawns are not here, so that's why rook to d8, good defensive move here by Peter Svidler. So queen to c4. This was Magnus Carlsen maybe first inaccuracy in the game. Here he had a great continuation, b3. It's really time to open the light square, the dark square diagonal, because now we can also threaten to play bishop to a3 and attack the rook here. So black would be forced to create some spaces for the rook, but now after the move bishop to a3, you see rook to f7, now rook to e1, and you see now the perfect harmony of white's pieces within a direct attack against the queen. The f5 is weak. Still, these knights are very, very dangerous. We can even try knight to c4, knight to e5. We can even include the queen somehow into the attack. Queen to h3 ideas, and here Magnus played maybe a little bit of, it seems like an active move, but it's passive because it allows now here Peter Svidler to play knight to e7 and force the trades of knight. But Magnus goes for it. Knight takes e7. We have queen to e7 and now knight to d5. We have a reloading knight sort of. Now still this queen is endangered. We have queen to d7 and now bishop to e3. Magnus has regrouped. You see Peter Svidler has some developing problems, although still with opportunities to play the move g6, develop the dark square bishop. But I still like more a little bit this white's position, this activity, still with this 3 versus 2 situation on the queen side, so we can create maybe here a pass pawn situation. Great attack so far by Magnus in the game. Rook to e8 and now a4. Magnus realized his pawn majority on the queen side and push the pawn immediately. He wants, of course, to open the dark square diagonal and here maybe grab the b6 or maybe the a7 pawn. So g6. Here we have c3. Magnus locks the dark squares for the dark square bishop of blacks. Here we have bishop to g7 and now bishop to f3. This bishop needs really improvement, because whenever you see such positions, whenever you feel that you have a good activity, it's time to ask yourself the question, which piece needs improvement. So of course you see, although this bishop has a great activity, but so far it's aiming into nothing. So this move bishop to f3 comes with the idea to maybe create another move bishop to g4. Then we can create again some new threats, and also this rook needs also improvement. But the problem is that Peter Svidler has already occupied the d and e file, so you shouldn't basically compete with this heavy artillery in the center. It's, I think, really time to break the position with the move a5. So rook to c8, we have queen to b5. A good choice here by Magnus Carlsen, although you're a little bit simplifying the position, but still I don't think that black has so many counterattack possibilities here. Still we can continue, and after potential queen to b5, a takes b5, you see you still have troubles to defend this pawn. Both of these rooks are paralyzed by the knight, so you cannot compete here with the rook on somehow on the 7th rank. You cannot protect your pawn on a7, and rook to a8 is also not a possibility, as you risk some discovered attacks by the bishop here on a8. So that's why very, very tricky move by Magnus, this move queen to b5. Here rook to d8 was played, and now queen to b4. If you try, for instance, to attack the queen, then you get the fork on f6. That's the problem, tactical problem. If you try, for instance, knight to c7 in order to attack the knight, to challenge this very nice centralized knight, then you get knight to e7, also the fork, and you lose also some material with the bishop there. Again, white has a comfortable game. So in the game, after the move queen to b4, Peter Svidler tried knight to c5, and Magnus simply pushed further. You cannot take, you lose. Really, this rook will come into the game. This knight is then hanging in the game. Knight to d3 played by Peter Svidler, and we have now queen to h4. If you try again this move knight to b2, then you get knight to e7, again the fork, and again I think white is much better. So that's why after the move queen to h4, Magnus Carlsen's idea maybe here is to play something like bishop to h6, trade off the bishops, and maybe sneak in somehow with its knight, and maybe attack the dark squares in the continuation of the game. But still, I think this knight on d5 is very, very annoying. You see, Peter Svidler has really troubles to get rid of it in the game. Peter tried knight to e5. Now this fork idea doesn't work, because you get also some tactical threats on f3. So that's why Magnus played bishop to g2, and we have now rook to c4. Great move by Peter Svidler. We are attacking against something. Queen to e7. Magnus again forces the trades of queens. Queen to e7, knight to e7, and now king to f8. Knight to d5 again really this annoying knight in the center. So in the game, knight to d7 was played, and now 8x b6. Finally we have cracked the position. After 8x knight to b6, we have knight takes b6, 8x bishop b6, and now after bishop to b6, the position is about equal, but still Magnus will find really some great tactics now. The rook is hanging. Here Peter Svidler tried the move rook to b8, and here I wanted to pause the video and find really the best continuation here for Magnus, because Peter Svidler made a mistake here. He shouldn't have played rook to b8. He should have played rook to d2. That's a better way to attack this weakness, because you cannot protect it. We can simply go after this bishop somehow, go maybe here rook to c8, then attack also through the b file in a different way. But at least we have forced this rook on a1 to go to b1, because rook to a2 doesn't work. You get something like bishop takes c3 or rook takes c3. So at least we can paralyze white's rook, and the rook has to move to b1. But here in the game, Peter Svidler made a mistake, rook to b8, and now find really a good move, because there is also one rule in chess which says when your opponent attacks you, your first idea should be how to counterattack. It's not all about defenses. Here in the game, Magnus played the move bishop to d5. He counterattacked. If you try to, for instance, to take, then we can also take this rook, but also to play something like rook to a7 and attack the f7 weakness. So in the game, after the move bishop to d5, Peter Svidler tried rook to c8, but now Magnus plays really a great move, rook to a7. Again, he leaves the protection of this bishop. Here, rook to b7 was played, and probably it was a mouse slip by Peter Svidler, and in this position he resigned. But still, it's a tricky game. After rook to b6, you see we have rook takes f7. You cannot go rook to king to g8, as you get rook to b7 and will grab the rook. So you would be forced to play something like king to e8, and now here rook to g7. We have 3 pawns and a bishop for a rook. The evaluation here is much better for white. I think Magnus would have won this endgame, because he's really an endgame master. As I said, a very important win for Magnus Carlsen, and now he has good chances to win this one. Because I wanted to show you now the current standings. Here Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru have 5.5 points. Wesley has 5 points, and Levon Aronian 5 points. So in the last round, Nakamura plays Svidler, Magnus plays against Aronian. So even Aronian can can win this tournament, because if he wins the game against Magnus in a direct duel, so he can still be the winner. And Wesley is playing Alireza Firouzja. Probably Wesley will win this, because Alireza is not so good in this. He has only 1.5 points out of 8 games so far, so it's really not his thing. We'll see. Maybe he can make something happen against Wesley, but I doubt it, because Wesley has proved himself in this Fischer Random Chess. So, okay, as I said, I'll cover the last round too. Be prepared. This will be, I think, a wild last round, because everyone wants to win, and I think the best chances now to win this tournament has Hikaru Nakamura, because he has better additional criteria. He has this other things better than Magnus Carlsen. I think if Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru finish with the same point count, that Hikaru Nakamura will be the winner of this tournament. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting idea by Magnus Carlsen to sacrifice the exchange in an early stage of the game. Great game. If you want to see more content on my YouTube chess channel, here are my best chess games of all time series and my commented chess games played by computers. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.